Okay, I know that feeling. Um, well, we'll talk for about 10 minutes or so, and you can go back to your deadlines.
Great.
Yeah. Hey, I know Martha Foose
Oh yeah?
a little bit. I used to be the literary director of the Texas Book Festival, and we would have her come down and demo from her cookbooks whenever she had a new one. And so we did this event called Literary Deathmatch, where four writers got like 7 minutes each to perform a really electric passage from their book, and then there'd be judges on stage, and it was a very public sort of competition. And she won um, because she put the chef's toque on, and she talked about like there's this thing about each pleat, I guess, is a different way to cook an egg, and she went through all that. The funny thing is, she was the most nervous before. She was asking me so many questions, and then she wins. It was insane. Um, so tell me, I mean, you've traveled like to the depths of the Sierra Madre, East Africa. You've lived in the Mississippi Delta. Where does the wanderlust come from, do you think?
I guess childhood on the move. Born in Malaysia, grew up in Kuwait, moved to England when I was 8 and was told this was home. Never really felt like home. My father was born in India. His grandfather lived in India. I grew up with the idea that home was a kind of a mobile place.
Yeah. And so, for viewers of this program who don't know why you moved to the Delta, just briefly explain your sort of thinking and why you all went down there.
Well, I've always been a fan of Mississippi. I've been going to Oxford for about 10 years to see friends. And then I went for a picnic in the Delta with Martha Foose, the cookbook writer, and in a place called Pluto, Mississippi. And she showed me her father's house, which was for sale on 6 acres of gorgeous land with orchards and fruit trees and a big house. And I just decided to take the plunge and move in there. It was about 25 miles from the nearest supermarket and kind of out there in the cotton fields and the swamps.
And so, what did Mariah think about this when you talked to her about it?
Yeah, my girlfriend, she took a little bit of persuading. We were living in New York City, and I came back with this harebrained scheme. Let's move to the middle of nowhere in the Mississippi Delta. But she was game, and as same as me, she fell in love with the house and the place and the neighbors.
Yeah. And so, talk to me about the story of Henry, the one-time felon who ended up living and working for someone for Aunt Carrie for 47 years. I mean, your writing in the book is nice throughout, but you seem particularly amazed throughout that whole section of the
Well,
book.
it's not every state in the union that allowed you to go to a notorious penitentiary, Parchman Farm, which was kind of a continuation of slavery by another means. Anyway, Martha's Aunt Carrie needed a yard man, so she sent her husband up to Parchman, where you were allowed to just pick out a prisoner and take him home and house him and feed him, but you didn't have to pay him. He was essentially a slave. They went up there and they got this guy that she called Henry because she said she would never be able to remember his name, who was a murderer. And she built a cabin for him behind the house. And they kind of got into this driving Miss Daisy type relationship where they were devoted to each other, but they could never really admit it to each other. They would have dinner together every night, but Henry would sit facing away from her and she would sit at the table. He'd be off in the pantry with his own knives and forks and plates. Because if they ate together, they'd be breaking the racial taboo about black and white eating together. So it was a kind of story that got into the kind of mad, twisted racial complexities of Mississippi.
Yeah, yeah. And so there is another point in the book where you're talking about race relations and you know, you quote somebody saying that things have come a long way in Mississippi, but you make the good point that you know, things had a long way to go. That race relations had been so
further to come in Mississippi than anywhere else in the South.
Right. And so, I mean, life in general sort of seems slow to change in the Delta. Is that just because of the poverty there, or why do you think that that is?
I mean, I just think there's a deep cultural conservatism at work in the black community and the white community. I think there's also a kind of deep stubborn streak. Things change, but very slowly, except when you get to agriculture. I mean, it's like a showcase for modern industrial agriculture. It's got the latest machines and chemicals and lines of credit, and you know, the cotton grown in the Delta mostly goes to China. Everyone's kind of wired into international markets, so it's very modern in that way, but socially very slow to change.
Yeah. And so early in the book, you say that somebody had given you the advice to sort of compartmentalize, that was the way you could get through your sort of new life there. Were you able to do that? And if so, did it help?
Yeah, I think it's something we often do in our own families. You know, say if there's a family member that you disagree strongly with their political views, you set that in one compartment and put it to the side, and you know, this person is also a father and a husband, and you know, those views you disagree with are just one facet. And you kind of look past that to see the larger person. And I found myself doing that often in Mississippi, because, you know, it's a very right-wing place, and I'm not a very right-wing person. Not that I'm a very left-wing person either, but I think it's useful not to mistake the person for their political views.
Yeah. And so, are you all still living there now, or?
Living in Jackson, my wife got a job down here, and it was kind of too far to commute. It broke my heart to leave Pluto, but we're back there at the weekends.
Okay, great. Cool. Well, I really enjoyed reading it. Congrats, and I hope it all goes well.
All right.
Thanks so much for your
say
time.
Hello to Martha from you.
Yeah, I'm pleased too.
Every fold an egg.
Right. That's right. Okay, well, have a good day.
All right, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.